In a silent house, a father has spent years trying to understand the mystery of his daughter who never spoke, until an unexpected caregiver arrives, bringing not answers but a gentle ritual that promises to touch the invisible. Little by little, the girl awakens, with words, melodies, and memories that do not belong only to her. And when the red scarf sways on the porch, everyone feels there are encounters that heal what time forgot. Breakfast at the Sterling mansion, high in the Appalachian Mountains, always began the same way. The aroma of freshly baked cheese bread, strong West Virginian coffee, and silence. A silence that weighed heavier than the mountains surrounding the estate. Renato Sterling, a mining executive from West Virginia, watched his only daughter Lily, 7 years old, as she absently drew on the edge of her school notebook. Her deep brown eyes seemed to hold secrets that no adult could decipher. "Honey, do you want more guava juice?" he asked, knowing he wouldn't get a verbal answer. Lily merely pointed to the glass without lifting her eyes from the paper. Communication between them was established through gestures, glances, and an understanding that transcended words. But Renato, deep down, longed for the day he would hear his daughter's voice. Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper, who had helped raise the girl since birth, entered the dining room. "Mr. Sterling, another young woman has arrived for the caregiver position interview." "Now? I've already said I don't want to see any more specialists. I've spent a fortune on speech therapists, neurologists, psychologists. They all say the same thing. There's nothing physically wrong with her," he replied, running a hand through his graying hair, while Lily remained focused on her scribbles. "This one isn't a specialist, sir. She's a simple woman, from Oakhaven. She said she heard about the opening through the newspaper." Renato sighed. He had lost his wife, Marina, during Lily's birth. And in the 7 years since, the girl had never uttered a single word. The best doctors in New York City and Los Angeles had been consulted. Sophisticated tests had been performed. All confirmed there was no physical or neurological explanation for the child's mutism. "Send her away, Jenkins. I'm tired of false hopes." "Are you sure, sir?" "She seems different." "She said something that caught my attention." "What?" he asked, almost without interest. "She said she doesn't cure voices, she cures silences." Renato looked up, intrigued by the peculiarity of the phrase. Even if he no longer believed in anything, something in the way the housekeeper recounted the encounter piqued his curiosity. "All right. Tell her to give me 5 minutes and I'll see her in the study." Lily, who seemed oblivious to the conversation, suddenly looked up at the window, as if sensing something. Her father noticed the subtle movement and wondered if his daughter was also curious about the unexpected visitor. Upon entering the study, Renato found himself facing a woman of approximately 30, with tanned skin, black hair tied in a simple bun, and intense brown eyes that resembled a blooming dogwood. She was dressed simply. A long patterned skirt, a cotton blouse, and a red scarf tied around her neck. There was a serenity in her posture that contrasted with the formal environment of the study. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. My name is Ondine Rivers." "Good afternoon, Ms. Rivers. Mrs. Jenkins told me you came for the caregiver position." "Yes, I heard your daughter needs special care." Renato studied the woman for a few seconds. She didn't seem like the type of person he would normally seek to care for Lily. She had no visible diplomas, nor did she speak with the technical jargon of specialists. "My daughter doesn't speak, Ms. Rivers. She never has. I don't know what you heard, but I've consulted every possible specialist. None have been able to help her." "I didn't come here as a specialist, Mr. Sterling. I came as someone who knows silence." There was a profundity in that phrase that intrigued him. He noticed that her hands, though well kept, were working hands with small marks that told stories of effort. "And what exactly do you intend to do for my daughter?" Ondine smiled slightly. "I don't intend to do anything for your daughter. I intend to be with her." "Sometimes silence doesn't need a cure, it needs company." Renato frowned. It was an approach different from anything he had ever heard. "Do you have experience with children who don't speak?" "I have experience with children who have a lot to say, even when they don't use words." At that moment, the study door opened slowly, and Lily appeared, observing the visitor with curious eyes. Normally, the girl avoided strangers, remaining distant and withdrawn. But something about Ondine seemed to have attracted her. Ondine made no move to approach. She simply smiled and said in a serene voice, "Hello, Lily, what a beautiful name you have. Did you know that the lily is a flower that grows in silence, but when it opens, it perfumes the entire environment?" The girl took a step forward to her father's surprise and looked more closely at the red scarf around the woman's neck. "Do you like my scarf?" "It was woven by my grandmother in the Whispering Pines Valley. She used to say that red is the color of life that pulses, even when we are in silence." Lily extended her hand, lightly touching the fabric, and then looked at her father, as if asking for something. "What is it, honey?" The girl pointed to Ondine and then upstairs in the direction of her room. "I think she wants to show me something," Ondine said calmly. "May I?" Renato, still astonished by his daughter's unusual reaction, nodded. "Of course." As the two left, he remained standing, trying to understand what had happened. In 7 years, Lily had never shown such interest in anyone, much less someone she had just met. Mrs. Jenkins entered the study a few minutes later. "Did you see how the girl reacted, sir?" "I've never seen her do that before." "Yes, Jenkins. It's unusual. Are you going to hire the young woman?" Renato pondered for a moment. All the specialists with their modern techniques had failed. Perhaps it was worth trying a different approach. "I'll let her try for a week. Observe her carefully. I want daily reports." Meanwhile, in Lily's room, Ondine observed with interest the drawings on the walls. They were landscapes with mountains, rivers, and forests, all done with surprising precision for a 7-year-old child. In many of them, there was a solitary figure observing nature. The girl opened a wooden box and took out a different drawing, a house near a river with a leafy tree beside it. In the drawing, 3 figures holding hands stood in front of the house. Ondine observed the drawing carefully and then looked into the girl's eyes. "That's a beautiful family." "Is it your family?" Lily shook her head negatively. "Is it the family you would like to have?" The girl hesitated, then nodded slightly. "You know, Lily, sometimes words hide because they're afraid. They need to feel trust to come out. Do you trust me?" Night fell over the Appalachian Mountains, covering the Sterling mansion with a blanket of stars. Ondine had been settled in a room next to Lily's, at the girl's insistence, who kept observing the newcomer with a mixture of curiosity and hope. When everyone had retired, Ondine silently left her room. In her hands she carried a small raw cloth bag with herbs gathered from the estate's garden, pure honey she had asked Mrs. Jenkins for, and a worn red-covered notebook. She entered Lily's room, finding her awake as if waiting for her. "Can't sleep, little flower?" she asked softly. The girl shook her head, pointing to the window where the full moon illuminated the room with its silvery glow. "Ah, I see. The full moon brings many stories and secrets with it. Did you know my grandmother used to say that it's during the full moon that lost words find their way back?" Ondine lit a small lamp beside the bed and placed her belongings on the nightstand. With gentle and precise movements, she began to prepare an infusion. As she worked, she softly hummed a melody that spoke of rivers, mountains, and secrets kept in the heart of the earth. "This is a special infusion of lemon balm, chamomile, honey, and a little cinnamon. It's not magic as some might think," she explained, as she mixed the ingredients in a small porcelain mug. "The secret isn't in the formula, but in how it's taken, with love and trust." Lily watched everything with attentive eyes. When the infusion was ready, Ondine offered the mug to the girl, who hesitated for a moment before accepting it. "Before you drink, I want you to hold this mug with both hands, feel its warmth, and think of all the words that are kept inside you. You don't need to say them now. Just acknowledge that they exist." The child closed her eyes, holding the mug as if it were a precious treasure. After a few seconds, she began to drink slowly. Ondine smiled, seeing an expression of surprise on the girl's face. "It's good, isn't it? The honey from the mountains has a special flavor. They say the bees here visit flowers that only grow at the highest altitudes." As Lily finished drinking, Ondine picked up the red notebook and placed it beside the girl, along with a small white chalk. "This notebook is for you. When words can't come out through the mouth, sometimes they find a way through the hands. You can write or draw whatever you want in it. No one will read it without your permission." Before leaving, Ondine leaned in and whispered close to the girl's ear, "May words return to those who lost them out of fear. Good night, Lily." The next morning, something subtle had changed in the mansion. The aroma of the infusion still lingered in the air, mingling with the smell of fresh coffee. Renato was in his usual place at the breakfast table when Lily entered, walking with an unusual lightness. To his surprise, the girl approached him and for the first time in a long time held his hand for a few seconds before sitting down. "Good morning, honey," he said, trying to disguise the emotion that simple gesture had provoked in him. Lily did not respond verbally, but her eyes seemed livelier, observing everything around her with renewed attention. When Ondine entered the room, bringing a tray with more cheese bread, the girl smiled openly. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. Good morning." "Lily," Ondine greeted. "Good morning. Ms. Rivers, it seems you two have gotten along well. Lily is a very special girl. She has a unique way of communicating." During coffee, Renato observed how his daughter seemed more present, more connected with the environment. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it was noticeable to those who lived with her daily. Later, when Ondine took Lily to the garden, he took the opportunity to enter his daughter's room, intrigued by what might have happened during the night. The aroma of the herbal infusion was still present. On the nightstand, he found the empty mug and noticed something on the wall opposite the bed. A phrase written in white chalk that read, "The voice is not taught, it is awakened." Renato stood still, contemplating those words. He didn't recognize his daughter's handwriting, as she was still learning to write, but it also didn't seem to be Ondine's hand. It was something in between the two, as if the message had been written by a third person. "You shouldn't enter her room like that, sir," Mrs. Jenkins said, standing at the door. "The girl needs her space respected." "Sorry, Jenkins. I just wanted to understand what's happening." "Did you see how different she was today?" "Yes, sir, I did." "It seems this young woman, Ondine, has a gift with Lily. What infusion is this she prepared? What herbs are these?" "Simple things, sir. Lemon balm from our own garden, chamomile, honey. Things we've always had around here. The difference is the way she makes it." In the garden, Ondine and Lily walked among flower beds. The caregiver had brought a colorful kite, handmade with tissue paper and bamboo sticks. With gentle gestures, she showed the girl how to hold it while running. Renato watched from the veranda, still disturbed by the phrase in the room. He saw when his daughter, for the first time in years, ran freely across the lawn, making the kite soar into the sky with a joy he almost no longer recognized. "How did you manage that?" he asked Ondine when Lily was distracted playing with the kite. "I didn't do anything extraordinary, Mr. Sterling. I just gave her space to feel safe." "And that infusion you prepared? What's in it?" Ondine smiled. "Nothing you don't have in your own kitchen. Would you like to try it?" He hesitated. "I don't know. Don't you trust me? Or are you afraid to discover that the solution has always been within your reach?" Those words struck him like a revelation. How many times had he sought complex answers, expensive treatments, elaborate diagnoses, when perhaps what his daughter needed was something simpler and deeper. "I'll prepare the infusion tonight. You are welcome to participate in our ritual if you wish." The following days brought small changes that, combined, began to transform the atmosphere of the house. Lily spent hours in the garden with Ondine, learning to identify plants, smelling their aromas, touching the earth. On a particularly sunny afternoon, while playing near the stream that cut through the property, the girl surprised everyone by producing a sonorous breath, almost a musical note as she tried to imitate the song of a robin. Renato, who was working in his study, heard that sound and ran to the garden. It wasn't a word, but it was the first voluntary sound Lily had produced in years. "Did you hear that?" he asked Ondine, barely containing his emotion. "I did," she replied calmly. "It's the beginning." That night, Renato decided to invite a specialist, Dr. Paul Edwards, a neurologist from New York City, who had treated Lily several times. He wanted him to witness the changes and perhaps explain them. The doctor arrived the next morning and spent the day observing the interaction between Lily and Ondine. After a few hours, he asked to speak privately with Renato. "What do you think, Paul? Are you seeing any changes? Physically, there's nothing new to report. There's no brain damage or structural problem, as I've always maintained. But there's something different in her attitude, in how she relates to the environment. And the sound she made yesterday, do you think she might start talking?" The doctor adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "Renato, you know I've always been a man of science, but there are situations where we need to consider other dimensions of human experience. What dimensions would those be, Paul? Renato questioned, crossing his arms in a defensive posture. The doctor took a deep breath before answering. There's a dimension we could call spiritual, for lack of a better term. Sometimes the body silences what the soul cannot say. Renato shook his head, skeptical. Now you're going to tell me my daughter needs a spiritual healer, not a doctor. I'm not suggesting anything mystical, Renato. I'm just saying that Lily's selective mutism might have deep emotional roots that we cannot access with our traditional methods. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Jenkins, who seemed agitated. Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent call in the study. It's from the company. While Renato took the call, Paul took the opportunity to observe the interaction between Ondine and Lily in the garden once more. The two were sitting in the shade of a persimmon tree with the red notebook open between them. She seems to trust you a lot, the doctor commented, approaching. Ondine looked up, serene. Trust is the first step to any healing. And what kind of healing are you promoting, Ms. Rivers? I'm not promoting any healing, Doctor. I'm just offering a safe space for Lily to find her own voice. With all due respect, your approach seems unscientific. With all due respect, Doctor, science is wonderful for many things, but it cannot always explain the mysteries of the human soul. Lily, who until then seemed oblivious to the conversation, suddenly picked up the notebook and wrote something with her white chalk. She showed it first to Ondine, who nodded with a smile, and then extended the notebook to the doctor. Paul read aloud. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Impressive. That same day, driven by curiosity and distrust, Renato decided to send a sample of the infusion prepared by Ondine for analysis at a laboratory in New York City. He took advantage when Ondine took Lily for a walk by the stream and collected some of the drink left in the thermos. 3 days later, he received the result. The analysis detected no psychoactive or medicinal substances, only natural components of the herbs mentioned by Ondine honey, and a curious observation from the lab technician. The sample exhibits an unusual reaction to electrical pulse, suggesting a possible alteration in the molecular structure of the water, similar to what is observed in studies on the influence of human intention on liquids. Renato reread that observation several times, without fully understanding what it meant. He decided to keep the result to himself, at least for now. The companionship between Lily and Ondine continued to produce small wonders. The girl now responded with more elaborate gestures, drew with more detail, and to everyone's delight began to produce soft melodies, humming wordlessly, but with a musicality that moved those who heard her. On a rainy afternoon, while playing puzzles in the library, Lily surprised everyone. When Ondine announced she needed to get something from the kitchen, the girl looked at her and said in a clear, though low voice, "Bye-bye." Ondine smiled, as if this were expected, and left. Renato, who was in a nearby armchair reading a newspaper, let the paper fall to the floor. That simple English word, probably learned from a cartoon, crumbled all his defenses. He felt his eyes well up and, for the first time in a long time, allowed himself to cry in front of his daughter. Lily approached, touched her father's face, and wiped away one of his tears with her little finger. Then she returned to the puzzle as if nothing extraordinary had happened. When Ondine returned, she found father and daughter together, assembling the puzzle in silence but with a new, palpable connection between them. "She spoke," Renato said, still emotional. "She said bye-bye when you left." "I know," Ondine replied with a serene smile. "The words are returning like birds returning to their nest after winter." "How did you know this would happen?" "I didn't know for sure, but I've been seeing the signs. Lily is feeling safe enough to express herself." "What did you do? How did you achieve this in days, when years of therapy had no effect?" Ondine sat beside them, helping to fit a difficult puzzle piece. "Renato, when a voice awakens, what was dormant also awakens. It's important that you are prepared." "Prepared for what?" "To hear what Lily has to say. It won't always be easy." That warning echoed in Renato's mind. What could his daughter say that would be difficult to hear? What memories or feelings could be dormant in that 7-year silence? In the following days, intriguing signs began to emerge. One morning, Renato found Lily in the guest room where Ondine was staying. The girl was in front of the mirror, writing something on the glass fogged by the steam from the hot bath the caregiver had just taken. When he approached, he saw a single word, juniper. "What is juniper, honey?" Lily looked at her father, then at Ondine, who had just come out of the bathroom already, dressed, drying her hair with a towel. "It's my grandmother's name," Ondine replied with an expression of surprise, "but I never mentioned that to Lily." That same afternoon, the girl made a different drawing in her red notebook. It was the image of a simple house with a burning roof. When she showed the drawing to Ondine, the caregiver visibly paled. "It's just a drawing, Ondine," Renato said, noticing her discomfort. "Children draw random things all the time." "There's nothing random about this," she replied, regaining her composure. "Lily is starting to access memories that are not hers." "What do you mean, memories that are not hers? What are you implying?" Ondine hesitated before answering. "There are things I cannot explain now, Renato. But trust me when I say that your daughter is in a process of awakening that goes beyond words." That night, when Ondine went to put Lily to sleep, the girl clearly murmured the word mother and then began to hum the same melody that accompanied the preparation of the herbal infusion every night. "Yes, little one, your mother is always with you, even if you can't see her," Ondine said, adjusting the covers. "Not my mother, your daughter," Lily replied with a clarity that surprised the caregiver. Ondine remained still for a few seconds, processing what she had just heard. How could that child know? How could she mention something so intimate and painful from her past? Meanwhile, in the study, Renato began an investigation into Ondine Rivers' past. Something about that woman and her seemingly supernatural connection with Lily intrigued and at the same time frightened him. Using his contacts and resources, he obtained some preliminary information. He discovered that, about 7 years ago, there had been a fire in a small village near Oakhaven, in rural West Virginia, not far from the Appalachian Mountains. In the fire, a woman named Juniper Rivers died, and there were reports of a missing child. In the police notes, there was a mention of a supposed local healer, known for her teas and infusions, and a detail that made Renato shiver: a red scarf that had been found floating in the Willow Creek River near the scene of the tragedy. Confronted with this information, Renato felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be possible? Was there some connection between that fire, the mysterious Ondine, and his daughter's silence? The next morning he decided to confront her. He found Ondine in the garden, gathering herbs for her nightly infusion. "I need to talk to you, Ondine. It's about your past." She slowly rose, holding a sprig of rosemary. Her face was serene, but her eyes revealed an old sadness. "I knew this moment would come, Renato." "What do you want to know?" "Who are you really? And what connection do you have with my daughter?" Ondine took a deep breath, looking at the mountains in the distance as if seeking strength in the majestic landscape. "I am exactly who I said I was. Ondine Rivers, from Oakhaven. But there's more to my story than I told. And yes, there is a connection between Lily and me, a connection that even I don't fully understand." "What is this connection, Ondine?" Renato insisted, his eyes fixed on the caregivers. Ondine caressed the red scarf around her neck, a gesture that Renato now perceived as laden with meaning. 7 years ago, I lost my daughter in a fire in the village where we lived, near Oakhaven. My grandmother Juniper, who raised me and taught me everything about herbs and their healing powers, also perished that night. And what does that have to do with Lily? When I first saw your daughter, Renato, I recognized something familiar in her, a soul that had crossed paths with mine at some point. I didn't come here to claim anything or to cause trouble. I came because I felt she needed me, just as I needed her. Renato felt his blood run cold in his veins. "Are you suggesting that Lily is your daughter?" "That's absurd. My wife Marina gave birth to her at St. Jude's Hospital in New York City. I was there." "I'm not suggesting anything, Renato. I'm just sharing what I feel. And what your daughter seems to feel too." At that moment, Lily appeared in the garden, walking towards them with the red notebook in her hands. As she got closer, she opened it to a page where she had written, in shaky but legible letters, the word family. Below, a drawing showed 3 figures holding hands in the rain: a tall man, a woman with a scarf around her neck, and a girl between them. "Is that what you see, honey? Is it the 3 of us?" Renato asked, his voice choked. Lily nodded and, to their surprise, said clearly, family is not chosen. It is recognized. That phrase, pronounced with such conviction by a 7-year-old child who until a few days ago hadn't spoken, left Renato speechless. It didn't seem like something a girl of that age would normally say. "Where did you hear that, Lily?" he asked, disturbed. "In the dream." "The river woman told me." Undine and Renato exchanged worried glances. The executive felt he needed concrete answers, not just mysterious coincidences and enigmatic phrases. "I need a few days to sort some things out, Undine. Can you continue to look after Lily while I'm away?" "Of course, Renato. We'll be here waiting for you." The next day, Renato left for Oakhaven, determined to discover the truth about the fire and the possible connection to his family. He drove his own car, preferring privacy to organize his thoughts during the journey along the winding road that cut through the Appalachian Mountains. Oakhaven was a small historic town, known for its handcrafted pottery and mild climate. Following the instructions he had obtained, he headed to an even smaller village, about 20 miles from the center, near the Willow Creek River. Upon arrival, he found a cluster of simple houses, some still bearing marks of reconstruction after what appeared to have been a tragedy. He stopped in front of a small general store and asked about the fire 7 years ago. The woman behind the counter, a woman of about 60 with gray hair tied in a bun, studied him with suspicion. "Are you a journalist? Or a police officer?" "No, ma'am. I'm just someone looking for information about a person I recently met." Undine Rivers. Upon hearing that name, the woman's expression softened. "Undine. I haven't heard of her in a long time. After the tragedy, she disappeared. Many thought she had also died. Can you tell me what happened that night?" The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Eleanor, closed the store and invited Renato to sit on her porch, where she offered strong coffee and homemade biscuits. It was a stormy night like few we've seen around here. Lightning struck Mrs. Juniper's house, which was a little isolated near the river. The fire spread quickly. Undine lived there with her small daughter and her grandmother. And what happened to them? Mrs. Juniper couldn't get out. As for Undine and the girl, Mrs. Eleanor paused, looking at the horizon as if reliving the scene. "I saw Undine that night covered in soot, running towards the river with something in her arms. I thought it was her daughter. But the next morning, when the searches began, they only found the red scarf she always wore floating in the water. And the child? Was she never found?" "Not around here. Some said they saw Undine hand the girl to someone on the road, but it was never confirmed. Others thought both had been swept away by the river's current, which was very strong that night." Renato felt a lump in his throat. "How old would Undine's daughter be today?" "Let me see. She had just turned 1 when it all happened. So today she would be about 8 years old, more or less." Lily was 7. Thanking Mrs. Eleanor for the information, Renato proceeded to the nearest hospital, in the neighboring town of Maplewood, West Virginia. There, with the help of his influential contacts, he gained access to hospital records from that time. And he found something disturbing. On the same date as the fire, there was a record of a female child, unidentified, with minor burns and an apparent state of shock. The girl did not speak, and there was no one to claim her. 3 weeks later, she was put up for adoption. With trembling hands, Renato scrolled through his phone, looking for photos of Lily's birth. The date roughly coincided with the time of the fire. His wife Marina had had a difficult pregnancy, and the birth had been complicated, resulting in her sudden passing. In the confusion and grief, he had barely seen his daughter in the first few days, focusing only on surviving the loss of his beloved wife. A hypothesis began to form in his mind. What if the child he had raised as his daughter all these years was, in fact, the girl rescued from the fire? Could it be possible that, in the confusion of those tragic days, some kind of exchange or mistake had occurred? The thought was absurd, but the coincidences accumulated. Lily's silence, her immediate connection with Undine, her knowledge of details no one had told her. Like the name Juniper, back at the mansion in the Appalachian Mountains, Renato found Undine and Lily in the garden, planting flower seedlings. The domestic and harmonious scene contrasted with the turmoil in his mind. "We need to talk, Undine. Alone." In the study, Renato laid out his discoveries and suspicions. Undine listened in silence, her face alternating between surprise and a kind of silent confirmation. You knew this all along? You knew Lily could be your biological daughter? Undine took a deep breath before answering. I wasn't sure, Renato, but from the first moment I saw her, I felt an inexplicable connection. And when she started mentioning things from my past, drawing the burning house, why didn't you tell me your suspicions? And what would I say? Hello, I think your daughter might be mine, whom everyone thought was dead. You would have thrown me out before I even had a chance to help her. What happened that night, Undine? The truth, please. Undine closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength to relive painful memories. When the fire started, my grandmother ordered me to save the child. I ran to her room, wrapped her in a wet blanket and went out the back towards the river. The house was collapsing. I couldn't go back to help my grandmother. She paused, tears beginning to stream down her face. The storm was terrible. I managed to cross the river at its shallowest part, carrying my daughter. She was in shock, not crying, making no sound at all. I walked along the road, desperate, until I found a car. It was a couple returning from a party in Maplewood. I asked them to take us to the nearest hospital. And what happened there? We were both in a terrible state. I covered in soot, soaked, without documents. My daughter in shock. The doctors took her for exams and told me to wait. But then I fainted from exhaustion. When I woke up hours later, they said there was no child registered as my daughter. For that I must have been delirious due to the trauma of the fire. Renato felt a shiver. They didn't believe you? No, I had no way to prove it. All our documents, photos, everything, had been destroyed in the fire. And I was seen in the region as the granddaughter of the crazy healer, the forest witch, as some called my grandmother. Who would believe me against an entire system? And you looked for her all these years. I did, Renato. But without resources, without legal support, what could I do? I wandered for years, working here and there, always looking for clues. Until one day, I saw a picture of you with Lily in a magazine in a report about successful executives. I recognized her eyes. The same eyes as my Carolina. Carolina, was that her name? Yes, Carolina, Undine confirmed, her eyes moist with tears. I named her in honor of my mother, who passed away when I was still a child. Renato walked to the window, watching Lily playing alone in the garden, talking softly to the flowers as if they could hear her. The sight of the child he considered his daughter was now shrouded in a mystery he couldn't fully decipher. Did you come here to take her from me? He asked, unable to face her. No, Renato. I came here because destiny brought me, because she needed to regain her voice, and perhaps I was the only one who could help her do that. And now, what do you intend to do? Undine approached, standing beside him at the window. I'm not here to undo what destiny has built. You are her father, Renato, the father she knows who loved and cared for her all these years. But you are her biological mother. You have rights. Rights? She smiled sadly. What are rights when we talk about love? Lily, or Carolina as I called her, needs stability, security. She needs you. And she needs you too, from what I'm seeing. Undine nodded silently. Both stood watching the girl for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts. How did she remain silent for so many years? The doctors never understood, Renato said, breaking the silence. The trauma of that night was profound. The fire, the screams, the storm. She was very small. Perhaps her brain decided that silence was the only possible protection. And perhaps she could only break that silence when she felt completely safe again. And you were the one who made her feel that way. Not just me, Renato. You too. The safety of your home, your constant love all these years. That's what allowed her to finally open up. I was just the catalyst, the bridge to memories that were dormant. The next morning, Renato woke up with a decision made. He found Undine in the kitchen, preparing a different infusion with a more citrusy aroma. I want you to tell me everything about Carolina. About what she liked, her quirks, her tastes. I want to understand who my daughter is. Undine smiled, moved by the request. She loved water. Even as a tiny baby, she was fascinated by the river. My grandmother used to say she had the spirit of water sprites, the mermaids of our rivers. Maybe that's why I instinctively brought her close to the water that night. As they talked, Lily entered the kitchen. She looked at them with a serene expression and said in a clear voice, "Good morning." "Daddy, good morning, Undine." "Good morning." "My love," Renato replied, trying to act normally despite the extraordinary situation. "Did you sleep well?" Undine asked, serving orange juice to the girl. Lily nodded. I dreamed of the river, and of a wooden house near it. Kate had red flowers in the window. Ondine exchanged a meaningful look with Renato. Geraniums, she said. We had red geraniums in the windows of our house. Over the next few days, Lily began to speak more and more. Short sentences at first, then entire conversations, especially with Ondine. Often she mentioned details of a life she could not have consciously lived, at least not as Lily Sterling. One afternoon, Renato found the two sitting by the stream that cut through his property. Lily held in her hands a small boat made of twigs and leaves, which Ondine had taught her to build. My house was like this, wasn't it? Wooden like this little boat, the girl said. Yes, it was, Ondine confirmed. A simple house but full of love. And Grandma Juniper made pumpkin pie with cinnamon. How do you remember that, little one? I don't know. It's in here, Lily said, pointing to her own head. Like a story someone told me a long time ago. Renato approached and sat beside them. May I join you? Of course, Daddy. Lily smiled, handing him a little boat she had just made. This one is for you to float in the river. The three stayed there, floating little boats in the gentle current, watching them sail until they disappeared around the bend in the stream. There was a peace in that moment that contrasted with the complexity of the situation. Is Ondine leaving? Lily asked suddenly, looking at her father. Renato didn't know what to answer. He looked at Ondine, seeking help. I need to go soon, Lily, she replied softly. My work here is almost complete. Was your work to make me talk again? Latter, my work was to help you find your own voice. And you did. The girl was thoughtful for a few moments. But I still have things to say. And things to hear, too. And you will continue to speak and listen, my love, Ondine assured. Your father will always be here to listen to you. But you are my mother, aren't you? The woman from the dream. Ondine froze, unsure how to answer that direct question. She looked at Renato, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to tell the truth. Yes, Lily, I am your biological mother. But your father, Renato, is the one who raised you all these years with much love. I know, the girl replied with surprising maturity. Family is not chosen, it is recognized. That's what the river woman told me in the dream. What river woman, honey? Renato asked, intrigued. The one with long hair who wears a necklace with a blue stone. She visits me in my dreams for as long as I can remember. She always says beautiful things about family and about listening to your heart. Ondine brought her hand to her neck, where she used to wear an aquamarine necklace that she had lost on the night of the fire. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Renato and Ondine sat on the veranda, contemplating the starry sky and the majestic silhouette of the Appalachian Mountains. What do we do now, Ondine? You have rights over her. She is your biological daughter. She is my daughter, yes, but she is also yours, Renato. Blood is just one form of kinship. There are bonds that are created by love, by daily care, by constant presence. These bonds are as strong as biological ones. Are you saying you're going to give her up? After all these years of searching? Ondine smiled melancholically. I'm not giving up anything. I'm recognizing what's best for her. Lily has an established life here with you. She has stability, security, comfort. I have none of that to offer. But you brought her voice back. You connected her to her origins. And that was my purpose, to return what trauma had taken from her. Now that it's done, I need to follow my path. What if I don't want you to go? Ondine looked at him, surprised. What are you saying, Renato? I'm saying that Lily needs you. And, to be honest, so do I. This house has never been as alive as it has been in the last few weeks since you arrived. Are you offering me a permanent job as a caregiver? Hanatu, I'm saying that perhaps we can find a solution together. For her sake. And who knows, for ours too. That night an unexpected storm swept over the Appalachian Mountains. Thunder echoed among the mountains, recalling the fateful night 7 years ago. Lily woke up scared, screaming for Ondine. The caregiver rushed to the girl's room, finding her huddled under the covers, trembling. It's all right, little one. The storm can't hurt you here. I remember, Ondine. I remember the fire, the rain, the cold river. You carried me. You saved me. Ondine hugged her, gently rocking her. Yes, my Carolina, I saved you, and I will always protect you wherever you are. Renato watched from the doorway, his heart torn between gratitude for the woman who had saved his daughter and the fear of losing the family he had built all these years. The next morning, the storm had passed. leaving the air clean and the sky an intense blue. Renato found Ondine's room empty. On the neatly made bed, there was only a note written in the caregiver's delicate handwriting. "Dear Renato, thank you for welcoming me into your home and for taking such good care of my Carolina all these years. What you offered last night touched me deeply, but I need time to organize my thoughts and feelings. I am not abandoning you. I just need space to understand my place in this new configuration. Lily Carolina needs stability now that she has regained her voice. My constant presence could confuse the bonds she is rebuilding. I will be at Mrs. Eleanor's house in Oakhaven for a few weeks. When I am ready, I will return to talk about the future. With affection and gratitude, Ondine." Renato read the note several times, trying to process what he felt. Relief that it wasn't a definitive goodbye, disappointment at the sudden departure, or simply confusion in the face of the situation's complexity. Beside the note, he found the red scarf that Ondine always wore around her neck. It was as if she had left a piece of herself, a symbol of her promise to return. When he went to Lily's room to give her the news, he found his daughter already awake, sitting on the bed with the red notebook Ondine had given her. "Ondine left, didn't she?" the girl asked, surprising him with her perception. "Yes, honey. But she left a note saying she'll be back. She needs some time to think." Lily nodded with an understanding that seemed to go beyond her 7 years. "She's scared." "Scared? Of what?" "Of messing up our family. Of confusing everything. But she'll come back when she's ready." "How do you know that, honey?" The girl smiled enigmatically. "The river woman told me in the dream. And she also told me that I should practice my words while I wait, so that when Ondine comes back, I can tell her all the stories I kept inside me." In the days that followed, the house seemed emptier without Ondine's presence, but Lily's voice continued to blossom. The girl spoke more and more, sharing thoughts, asking questions, expressing desires. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a constant flow of long-repressed words. Renato, guided by Dr. Paul, began to record conversations with his daughter, documenting her extraordinary recovery. The doctor was fascinated by the case and planned an article for a scientific journal, with due protection of the child's identity. "It's truly remarkable," the neurologist said during a visit. "In all my years of practice, I've never seen a case of such prolonged selective mutism reverse so completely and quickly." "Do you think it has to do with their biological connection?" Renato asked. "It's possible. There are studies on cellular memory and epigenetic bonds that could partially explain the phenomenon. But I think there's something deeper happening here, something that science may not yet be able to fully explain." A week after Ondine's departure, Lily asked to visit the Willow Creek River, the place where everything had happened 7 years earlier. Renato initially hesitated, fearing that the visit might traumatize her again, but Dr. Paul supported the idea. It could be a form of processing and healing. If she's asking for it, it means she's ready to face those memories. So on a Saturday morning, Renato and Lily left for Oakhaven. The girl was excited throughout the journey, pointing to the landscapes passing by the car window and talking incessantly about what she saw. "The mountains look like sleeping dragons, don't they, Daddy? Grandma Juniper used to say that the world is a big living being and the mountains are its ribs." Renato smiled, marveling at his daughter's imagination and eloquence. It was as if she was compensating for all the years of silence with an inexhaustible flow of words and observations. Upon arriving in Oakhaven, they first went to Mrs. Eleanor's house, hoping to find Ondine. But the woman informed them that the young woman had left 3 days earlier for the old village, saying she needed to revisit the site of the fire. "She seemed determined to make peace with the past," Mrs. Eleanor explained. "She took flowers to the place where her grandmother's house was and said she would meditate by the river." Following the woman's directions, Renato and Lily drove to the small village near the Willow Creek River. The dirt road wound through green hills until they reached a clearing where there had once been some houses. "It was here," Lily said suddenly, pointing to an empty space where only foundation stones marked the site of an old building. "Our house was here. And over there where those trees are was the path to the river." Renato parked the car, and they walked to the indicated spot. There was no sign of Ondine, but Lily seemed to know exactly where to go. She followed the path among the trees, descending a small slope until they reached the riverbank. There, on a flat stone near the water, they found a small improvised altar, some flowers, shells, an unlit candle, and in the center, a bluish-green stone, an aquamarine similar to the necklace Ondine had mentioned losing on the night of the fire. Lily approached the altar with reverence, gently touching the stone. She was here. She left this for me. How do you know it's for you, honey? Because there's a word engraved on the stone. Look. Renato picked up the stone, and indeed there was a word delicately carved into its surface. Patience. At that moment, Lily sat on the riverbank, looking at the serene flowing water. She began to hum the melody that Ondine always sang while preparing her nightly infusions. You know, Daddy, I always knew there was something different about me. Even when I couldn't speak, I knew there were words inside me wanting to come out. But it was as if there was a closed door and I couldn't find the key. And Ondine helped you find that key? Yes, she showed me that the key was always with me. I just had to trust and not be afraid. Renato sat beside his daughter, watching the river that had separated and reunited so many destinies. Do you miss her? Yes, but I know she'll come back, she promised. Not with words, but here, Lily pointed to her own heart. And promises made here are the most important. They stayed there for some time in contemplative silence, listening only to the murmur of the water and the singing of birds. Then Lily asked something Renato didn't expect. Daddy, can we bring Ondine to live with us when she comes back? Our house has a lot of space and she seems to like you too. Renato didn't know what to answer immediately. The prospect of Ondine living in his house, not as an employee but as part of the family, was something he had briefly considered, but he wasn't sure how it would work in practice. That's something we'd need to talk to her about, honey. It's an important decision for all of us. But would you like it? I see how you look at her. It's different from how you look at Mrs. Jenkins or my school teacher. Renato couldn't help but smile at his daughter's perceptive observation. Yes, Lily, I would. Ondine is a very special person. Upon returning to Mrs. Eleanor's house to say goodbye before heading back to the Appalachian Mountains, they were surprised by the news that Ondine had stopped by that morning, leaving a package for Renato. She said you would come and asked me to give you this, the woman explained, handing him a brown paper package tied with twine. Inside the package was the red notebook that Ondine always carried with her, full of notes about herbs, infusion recipes, dreams, and reflections. On the first page, a message written especially for them. Renato and Carolina R. Lily, I leave with you this notebook that contains much of who I am. In it are recipes passed down through generations, dreams I had over the years searching for my daughter, and thoughts that helped me survive loss and uncertainty. There is a phrase from my grandmother Juniper that always guided me. When fire and water meet, the voice of the soul is born. I didn't fully understand its meaning until I found you. The fire that destroyed our home and separated our lives also forged a strength within us. The river water that almost took us also purified us and brought us together again in a way I never imagined possible. I need time to reorganize my life, to prepare myself to be part of your family, in a way that brings balance and harmony to all of us. But I will return soon, as I promised. In the meantime, continue practicing our nightly infusions. The secret, as I always said, is not in the herbs, but in the love with which they are prepared. With all my heart, Ondine. Renato closed the notebook, moved. He looked at Lily, who smiled serenely. Let's go home, Daddy. We have an infusion to prepare tonight. On the way back, crossing the bridge over the Willow Creek River, Lily asked to stop the car. They got out and stood for a few minutes, watching the water flow. Thank you for bringing me here today, Daddy. It was important for me to see where I came from, to understand where I'm going. 3 months passed since the visit to the Willow Creek River. The Sterling mansion in the Appalachian Mountains had subtly changed. The silence that once weighed over the house gave way to an atmosphere of music, laughter, and conversations. Lily now spoke fluently, expressing complex thoughts and asking questions that often left adults without an immediate answer. The girl's transformation was remarkable. Her teachers at the private school in Greenbrier, West Virginia, where Renato had recently enrolled her, were impressed by her articulation skills and her exceptionally rich vocabulary for a child her age. No one would imagine that, just a few months earlier, she hadn't uttered a single word. It's as if she stored knowledge during all those years of silence, commented her teacher Mariana during a meeting with Renato. Lily absorbs information like a sponge and processes it in a surprisingly mature way. At home, the girl spent hours in the library, devouring books that would be considered advanced even for teenagers. She had a special interest in stories about nature, American folklore, and curiously, literature on medicinal herbs and their traditional uses. Every night, she and Renato maintained the infusion ritual, following the recipes from Ondine's red notebook. It was a moment of connection between father and daughter when they shared the day's experiences, and sometimes Lily revealed more memories of her early childhood before the fire. "Daddy, today I remembered a song Grandma Juniper used to sing when she picked herbs," she said one night, as she stirred honey into the chamomile and lemon balm infusion. "It was about plants that talk to those who know how to listen. Can you sing a little bit?" Renato asked, always fascinated by these revelations. Lily hummed a soft melody in an old dialect, with words that spoke of healing, respect for nature, and ancestral wisdom. It was a song she certainly would not have learned in her life as Lily Sterling. "Grandma Juniper used to say that every plant has its own voice," the girl explained after finishing the song. "Some whisper, others shout, and we need to learn to listen to each of them differently." Renato observed his daughter with a mixture of admiration and wonder. How could a 7-year-old child articulate such profound concepts? Could it be possible that these memories were indeed preserved somewhere in her mind, just waiting for the right trigger to emerge? Dr. Paul continued to monitor the case, documenting the girl's extraordinary development. He visited the mansion bi-weekly, conversing at length with Lily and taking meticulous notes on her evolution. "It's as if she has 2 lives within her," he commented during a visit. That of Carolina, with memories that gradually surface, and that of Lily, which continues to develop. It's fascinating to observe how she integrates these 2 identities. During one of these visits, the neurologist brought a colleague, a respected researcher in cognitive neuroscience from Columbia University. There are documented cases of seemingly inaccessible memories emerging after trauma, the specialist explained. But Lily's case is unique because it involves memories formed at an extremely early age, when the brain is still developing. "And is there a scientific explanation for this?" Renato asked. "Science is still discovering the mysteries of memory," the researcher replied. "We know that traumatic experiences can be encoded differently in the brain, and there are recent studies on cellular, memory and epigenetics that suggest fascinating possibilities about how information can be stored beyond traditional neurological pathways." Renato had hired a new caregiver, Mrs. Teresa, an affectionate woman who helped with daily tasks. But at night, it was he who prepared the infusions and put his daughter to sleep, keeping alive the legacy that Ondine had left. "You miss her, don't you, Daddy?" Lily asked one night as he adjusted her covers. "Yes, honey. Ondine brought something special into our lives. She'll come back, I'm sure." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she promised." "Not with words, but here," Lily pointed to her own heart. "And promises made here are never broken." In early autumn, when the first leaves began to turn golden on the trees, Lily woke up especially excited. "She's coming back today, Daddy." "Who, honey?" "Ondine. She's coming back today," the river woman told me in the dream. Renato didn't want to fuel expectations that could lead to disappointment. In recent months, they hadn't received direct news from Ondine, only learned from Mrs. Eleanor that she was well, working with medicinal herbs in a community near Oakhaven. "Honey, we can't be sure. Ondine will come when she's ready." "But she is ready, and we are too." "You tidied her room, didn't you?" Indeed, Renato had kept the guest room Ondine had occupied exactly as she had left it, only ensuring it was cleaned regularly and always had fresh flowers. It was a gesture he himself didn't fully understand, part hope, part ritual. That afternoon, Lily insisted on preparing a cornmeal cake with fennel, following a recipe from Ondine's notebook. The kitchen filled with the sweet and comforting aroma as she worked with Mrs. Jenkins, measuring ingredients and mixing the batter with the concentration of a little chef. "The girl has her grandmother's gift in her hands," Mrs. Jenkins commented to Renato, who watched the scene leaning against the doorframe. "Look how she knows exactly how much of everything to put, without even properly measuring." "Her grandmother's?" Renato raised his eyebrows. "Oh, you mean Mrs. Juniper, Ondine's grandmother, the housekeeper clarified. They say she was a healer and also an excellent cook. She knew the exact point of every preparation, whether medicine or food. Renato reflected on how Mrs. Jenkins, without knowing the whole story, had unconsciously recognized the connection between Lily and her biological roots. It was as if, little by little, the girl's true nature emerged, instinctively recognized by those around her. Around 5 in the afternoon, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink, they heard the sound of a car coming up the road that led to the mansion. "It's her! It's her!" Lily shouted, running to the window. Renato felt his heart race. It could just be an unexpected visitor, a supplier, a colleague. He didn't want his daughter to be disappointed. But when he looked out the window, he recognized the small red car climbing the winding road. Lily didn't wait for the vehicle to park. She ran out the front door, descending the veranda steps with Renato right behind her, trying to catch up. "Lily, be careful. Don't run like that." But the girl didn't listen. Her bare feet barely touched the ground as she flew towards the car that had just stopped in the mansion's circular driveway. The car stopped, and even before the door opened, Lily was already there, practically jumping with excitement. When Ondine finally stepped out of the vehicle, she was greeted by a tight hug from the girl. "You're back. I knew it would be today. The river woman told me." Ondine smiled, hugging her back. And the river woman never lies, does she? She was different, her hair shorter, her skin more tanned by the sun, and a new serenity in her gaze. She wore a simple patterned cotton dress and, around her neck, instead of the old red scarf, a new necklace with the aquamarine stone. "You cut your hair," Lily observed, touching the ends of the black strands that now barely reached Ondine's shoulders. "Yes, I needed to leave some things from the past behind to embrace the future." "But the scarf? You don't wear it anymore." Ondine caressed the aquamarine necklace. "Some things from the past we carry differently. The red scarf is part of who I was. This stone represents who I am becoming." Renato approached slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. In recent months he had thought of Ondine daily, reliving in his mind every conversation, every glance, every shared moment. Now that she was there in front of him, he suddenly felt speechless. "Welcome back," he said finally with a contained smile, uncertain how to greet her after so many months. "Thank you for having me, Renato." For a moment, they just looked at each other, with Lily between them, forming a triangle of silent and deep connections. Then, breaking the tension of the moment, the girl took both their hands. "Let's go inside. We made cornmeal cake with fennel, just like in your notebook." The three entered the house together, where the aroma of the freshly baked cake created a welcoming atmosphere. "Did you know I was coming today?" Ondine asked, surprised by the prepared reception. Lily knew. She said the river woman told her in a dream. Ondine smiled, looking tenderly at the girl. "It seems you've developed a special connection with the waters, little one." "That doesn't surprise me. You were always sensitive to the elements, even as a baby." Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Teresa welcomed Ondine with warm hugs. Despite their short time together, the young woman had won the affection of everyone in the house with her simplicity and wisdom. During dinner, they shared stories of the months of separation. Ondine recounted how she had worked in a therapeutic community, helping people with her knowledge of herbs and infusions. She spoke about her journey of self-discovery, about how she needed to make peace with her past before she could fully embrace the future. "I met extraordinary people during that time," she reported. "Traditional healers, scientists researching properties of native plants, families preserving ancestral knowledge about nature. I learned a lot and was also able to share what I know." "And did you think of us?" Lily asked with the typical frankness of children. "Every day, little one. There wasn't a single day when you and your father weren't in my thoughts." After dinner, Ondine helped put Lily to sleep. Together, they prepared the nightly infusion, singing Mrs. Juniper's old song as they mixed the herbs and honey. The girl fought sleep as long as she could, fearing Ondine might disappear again, but finally fell asleep, holding tightly to the hand of the woman who, she now knew, was her biological mother. "She's exhausted from so much emotion," Ondine commented, silently leaving the room where Lily was finally sleeping. "And you? How do you feel?" Renato asked, leading her to the veranda, where two rocking chairs awaited under the starry sky. Like a traveler who finally finds her way back home, she replied, sitting down and accepting the glass of wine he offered. And now, what's your plan? Renato asked, sitting in the chair beside her. It depends, she replied, observing the stars above the mountains. On what? On you. On you, mainly. I came because I promised, and because my heart couldn't stay away any longer. But I don't want to complicate the life you've built. Renato gathered his courage and took Ondine's hands in his. You don't complicate our life, Ondine. You complete it. That night they talked for hours as they had never done before. They spoke about the past, about the years they had been separated without knowing of each other's existence, about the future they could build together. They spoke about Lily Carolina and how to help her integrate her two identities in a healthy way. The next morning, Renato woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. From his bedroom window, he saw Ondine and Lily picking herbs and flowers, chatting animatedly as they worked. The scene warmed his heart. He went down to join them, but first stopped in the study to retrieve something he had carefully kept. A carved wooden box, where he had placed the red scarf Ondine had left behind and the notebook with her recipes. In the garden, he found them organizing the gathered branches, separating them by type and property. Good morning, he greeted, feeling suddenly shy, like a teenager. Good morning, Daddy. Ondine is teaching me about the plants in our garden. Did you know we have 3 different types of mint? And that each one is for something different? I didn't know that, honey. It seems I have a lot to learn. Renato approached Ondine, extending the wooden box. I kept this for you. Not as relics of pain, but as witnesses to a miracle. Ondine opened the box, finding her red scarf carefully folded and the notebook she had left with them. Her eyes welled up. Thank you for keeping them with such care. In fact, Renato said, I didn't just keep them as memories. I kept them as promises of the future. At that moment, Lily approached, holding a freshly picked lily flower. She offered the flower to Ondine and said in a clear and melodious voice, Family is not chosen. It is recognized. The 3 embraced under the morning sun, united by bonds that transcended blood, time, and tragedy. The Sterling mansion, once so silent, now echoed with the voices of a family that recognized itself beyond words. The following week, Dr. Paul visited the house for his bi-weekly consultation with Lily. He was impressed to find Ondine there. So you returned, he commented, after the initial greetings. I must say that your absence was felt, not only by Lily and Renato, but also by me as a researcher. Your work with the girl challenged many of my scientific convictions. It wasn't work, Doctor, Ondine gently corrected. It was love. Perhaps that is the variable we scientists often forget to include in our equations, the doctor reflected. During the consultation, Lily demonstrated extraordinary progress. Her verbal capacity had expanded even further, and she could now articulate memories and impressions with surprising clarity. It's fascinating how Ondine's presence catalyzes her memories, the doctor observed. There's a connection between you that transcends conventional explanation. It's the maternal bond, Renato explained, who now fully accepted the reality of the situation. Even separated by years and circumstances, that bond never truly broke. In the weeks that followed, they established a new routine. Ondine settled permanently in the room they already considered hers. She began working with her medicinal herbs, attending to people from the local community who sought relief for various ailments. Her reputation as a healer quickly grew in the region. With Renato's support, she initiated a project to recover and document traditional knowledge about medicinal plants of the Appalachian Mountains. The executive, who previously invested mainly in the mining sector, redirected part of his resources to research on the sustainable use of American biodiversity. Lily blossomed every day. At school, she stood out not only academically, but also for her sensitivity and ability to connect with classmates. Mariana, her teacher, once commented that she frequently helped other children resolve conflicts, demonstrating emotional wisdom rare for her age. At home, the girl divided her time between her studies, typical childhood games, and learning the traditions Ondine transmitted to her. Although Renato initially feared she might be confused by her dual identity, Lily seemed to naturally integrate her different facets, "I am Lily, and I am also Carolina," she explained once when asked how she felt. "Just as the river is always the same, but never identical. The water passes, but the river remains." Renato, once so skeptical about unscientific approaches, now observed Ondine's work with respect. Science had clarified limits. The laboratory had registered a phenomenon of bonding. The neighbor had confirmed the rescue. The archives had pointed to the adoption. But it was affection, combined with listening, time, and courage, that unlocked his daughter's language. Dr. Paul, after months documenting Lily's case, published an article on selective mutism and recovery through emotional connection, without revealing the family's identity, but highlighting the psychological and neurological aspects of the process. The article generated debate in the medical community, especially for its mention of factors that transcended purely scientific explanation. "There is a fascinating intersection between science and mystery in this child's case," he wrote in the article's conclusion. "Perhaps a broader paradigm is needed to fully understand how trauma, memory, and emotional connection interact in human development." On a special night, when 6 months had passed since Ondine's return, Renato proposed to her by the same stream where they had floated little boats with Lily. It was a simple proposal, without grand gestures, just sincere words and a ring with a small aquamarine, similar to the necklace she wore. "I don't know if I'm ready," Ondine confessed. "I'm still learning to be a mother again, to build this new life." "We can learn together," he replied. "I'm not in a hurry. The ring is just a symbol of what we already know in our hearts." Ondine accepted the ring, not as an immediate formal commitment, but as a promise of a shared future that would be built in due time. In the following months, the transformation of the Sterling mansion continued. The garden, once merely decorative, became a living space with medicinal herbs, native flowers, and fruit trees. Ondine and Lily spent hours there, planting, harvesting, and learning about the cycles of nature. The house had learned to listen. Lily wrote entire words, sang, asked questions, and hugged. The adult who had everything relearned the humility of listening. Ondine shared her knowledge, no longer as secrets of a lost tradition, but as gifts to be cultivated and expanded. Thus the journey was fulfilled. A girl found her voice. A woman returned what the fire had stolen. A man exchanged control for listening. Between the river and the hearth, between honey, herbs, and memories, a family recognized itself not by blood, but by the call of the soul. And every time the breeze stirred a red scarf on the veranda, everyone remembered that certain truths are not explained. They are simply heard. Over time, routines changed. The girl's well-being guided everything. On an autumn afternoon, 1 year after Ondine and Lily's first meeting, the family organized a small celebration in the garden. They invited Mrs. Eleanor, Dr. Paul, Mrs. Jenkins, and other dear friends. It was not a formal wedding, but a ceremony of union and recognition of the bonds that had formed between them. The garden was decorated with wildflowers and paper lanterns. A long table covered with a lace tablecloth held traditional Appalachian dishes, lovingly prepared by Mrs. Jenkins and Ondine. In the center, a corn cake decorated with edible flowers, and a small wooden sculpture representing 3 figures holding hands, the same drawing Lily had made at the beginning, when she still couldn't speak. Mrs. Eleanor brought along other people from the village near Oakhaven, including some who had known Mrs. Juniper and witnessed the tragedy of the fire. It was a way to reconnect Ondine with her original community and to introduce Lily to her roots. During the celebration, Lily surprised everyone with a speech she had secretly prepared. "Today we celebrate not only the union of my father and Ondine, but the power of the word," she began, standing on a small stool so everyone could see her. "For many years I lived in silence, keeping within me voices and stories that I couldn't express. Today, thanks to the love of these 2 wonderful people, I can say everything I feel." The girl paused, looking at the emotional faces around her. "I learned that sometimes we need to lose something to find something even more precious. My grandma Juniper used to say that silence holds seeds of words that blossom at the right time. I think my words have finally found their spring." The girl opened the red notebook Ondine had given her on the first day and read a passage she had marked. "Seek those who listen with their soul." The word reflects the love given without fear. She looked at her parents with bright eyes and concluded, "Thank you for teaching me to speak." "But Above all, thank you for teaching me to be heard." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden when she finished. Renato and Ondine hugged her, forming a circle of love and protection around the child who had united them in ways none of them could have imagined. The ceremony continued with traditional music played by local folk musicians. Stories were shared, laughter echoed among the mountains, and silent promises were made under the starry sky of the Appalachian Mountains. That night, as Lily slept serenely, Renato and Ondine sat on the veranda, contemplating the stars above the Appalachian Mountains. "Do you think she remembers everything from before the fire?" Renato asked. "Not everything, but enough to integrate who she was with who she became. And that's what matters. I still wonder how all this was possible. The coincidences, the premonitory dreams, the memories she shouldn't have." Ondine smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "My grandmother used to say there's more mystery between heaven and earth than we can comprehend. Some questions don't need answers, just acceptance. You know what impresses me most?" Renato continued after a moment of contemplative silence. "How she accepts all this so naturally. Two families, two identities, two intertwined stories. Children have a wisdom that we often lose as we grow up," Ondine replied. "They instinctively understand that love doesn't divide. It multiplies." In her room, Lily dreamed of rivers, mountains, and a long-haired woman wearing an aquamarine necklace. The woman was no longer a stranger in her dreams, but a familiar and comforting presence. In her dream, she heard the woman's voice repeating the words that now guided her life. The voice is not taught. It is awakened. And so in the Sterling mansion where silence once reigned, voices, laughter, and songs now echoed. The garden, once a mere ornament, became a living laboratory of healing and knowledge. The library gained a section dedicated to ethnobotany and traditional American medicine. And in the surrounding community, many found in the wisdom shared by Ondine a path to reconnect with nearly forgotten traditions. As the seasons passed, the project initiated by Ondine and Renato expanded. Her Center for the Study of Traditional Knowledge was created on the property, attracting researchers, students, and healers from various regions of the United States. Lily actively participated, often serving as a bridge between scientific knowledge and ancestral wisdom, with a naturalness that impressed the adults. On her 8th birthday, she received a special gift, a small red notebook similar to Ondine's, but new. "For you to start your own collection of wisdom," Ondine explained as she handed it to her. "Some things should be passed down from generation to generation, kept not only in memory, but also on paper." On the first page, Lily wrote in her still childish but firm handwriting, "Words are seeds. Some take longer to germinate, but when they find fertile ground, they grow strong and true. Grandma Juniper taught me this through my mother Ondine, who gave me back my voice, and my father Renato, who taught me to be heard. Because some stories don't end with an end, but with a new beginning. And some voices, once awakened, are never silenced again." The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Lily, Renato, and Ondine has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about connections that transcend time and space. Find it here by clicking the link to your left. If this narrative about the power of silence and words has awakened something in you, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Daily, we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the mysteries of the soul. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your comments on this story of redemption, love, and healing through words.